let's go to some factual questions. And I was with you. You will remember that in 2019, Hawaii, there was a AAAI, the Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence, the yearly conference there. And you were presenting a paper on the senior track. The paper was Performance Evaluation in Machine Learning, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and the Way Forward. And let's go through some of these elements, even if we don't reproduce that talk, which probably I think, I don't know if it was recorded, but the paper is out there. Mm-hmm. So one of the things, for instance, from your book, I think is very important here, is this distinction that you make between predictive and descriptive tasks and supervised and unsupervised models, and why this leads to very different ways of evaluating these models. Mm-hmm. And the tasks themselves and the problem that you have to solve. Mm-hmm. Maybe the optimization, there's some.
Yeah, I think, so prediction is, in a sense, it's important. Everybody wants to know what's going to happen later or in the future. It's hard, but it's one thing that, because at some point things happen and then we can see whether we are right or wrong. So predictive tasks like weather forecasting are easier to evaluate. Descriptive tasks, or we would say also in machine learning, generative models, like we now have GPT-3, a massive natural language model trained on a huge data set, and this can now do you give it a few words and it turns it into a story, or you give it something that looks like a question and it can answer the question. These things are harder to evaluate because the task that they're solving is more broad. So going back to the predictive task, even though it seems simpler to evaluate, it is still hard. And there is a whole field of measurement theory, and cognitive scientists have looked at this as well. How do I evaluate the ability of a student? Mm-hmm. What the cognitive scientists realized is that what you can measure, which is performance on an exam, is not really the real thing that you're interested in. So there is some underlying ability that you're trying to estimate. And you give people questions. The questions are a means to an end, not the end in itself. And that made me realize that even in sort of standard supervised predictive machine learning, we have the same thing. An algorithm may outperform another algorithm because they got lucky, just as sometimes as students we remember we got lucky. Ooh, I'm really glad that they didn't ask about chapter 5 because I hadn't read chapter 5. So now my mark on that course, which is forever on my transcript, is an overestimate of my actual ability. And today I couldn't do the exam at all, right? So my ability today is yet different again. So there are really powerful ideas, I think, that we can borrow and that we have to borrow in machine learning. And so that paper was a bit of an attempt to break that down. Sometimes, so the good, the bad, and the ugly. I added the way forward later in the title because I thought, there needs to be kind of a positive message there as well. And I had some ideas of how to extend it. But the bad and the ugly is that people get over obsessed with who won, and my algorithm outperformed another algorithm by 0.1%, and you think, well, is this really meaningful? Is this really what this is about? If I slightly change the data, would that still happen? Or so I think it's human psychology partly, because we scientists are human as well. So we want our paper to be accepted at the conference, and we want to win the best paper prize or the Turing Award, and that shapes us for better or for worse, right? So sometimes we forget the scientific questions a little bit and just pretend that we're in some kind of competition and need to run faster than everybody else. And sometimes you need to think, go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what is it that we're trying to achieve? And that's what that work was about. It surprises me. It got a fair amount of citation. I think that's because of the title more than anything else. But
no, it was a great talk. I remember